That's who so you're always looking at the big picture. How does this impairment relate to all the other associated findings? And how's it going to sound to a jury when you give that number? Is it going to make sense?
Hey, Doc, how many ADLs do you think sounds good to a jury? 4, 5, 10?
Here's the question. If you were a juror in this box, what would you think? That's the answer. That's the answer. But it's not a standalone. It's not like, oh, there's 7 ADLs. What's gonna put weight on that number? How many other associated findings do you have? How many times you keep hearing me say that? Associated findings. How many times you keep hearing me say that? Because that's what this is about. It's not about a standalone. So let's say the person had 10 80, you say they have 10 ADLs, but I don't have any supportive associated findings. Well, that's not going to look very good in front of a jury, and it doesn't make common sense. See? So it's always the associated findings with whatever it is you're pointing out. So, but the bottom line is, how would you see it? If you said 4, you know, well, that might not sound a lot, but what if you had a lot of associated findings? What if you had mechanism of injury, multiple injury magnifiers, primary and secondary subjective findings, multiple hybrid primary and secondary findings? I'm going to have no problem saying 4 is a lot. That's why you always have to look at associated findings when you're talking about this stuff, not just a standalone. But I make it simple for you. How do I make it simple for you? There's 7 minimum categories you want to look at. Mechanism of injury, subjective, hybrid, objective, MMI, impairment rating, prognosis. That's the bare minimum. And then I go, okay, there's primary evidence. This diagnostic, does it directly relate to that injury? Or does it indirectly relate? That's called secondary, if it indirectly relates to that diagnosis. And then you go multiple categories. Well, do you have multiple categories of diagnostics? Do you have an X-ray problem? Do you have an MRI problem? Do you have a Dynaram problem? Do you have a blood test problem? Those are multiple categories. Muscle strength problem. You have multiple categories of pathological abnormal diagnostics. So that's why I call it horizontal and vertical documentation. That's what's going to give me the weight and the justification and the authority and the credibility behind me saying an impairment rating or giving a higher or lower degree of impairment rating relative to the quantity or quality of ADLs. Associated findings, that's the key word. Horizontal, vertical documentation. That's the key word right there. Think about that every time you ask a question. And then how does it sound to a jury? How does it look to a jury? Okay. So those are some really good guidelines, by the way. I just gave you some unbelievably clear guidelines.